Hey, what's up guys, Metal571 here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Philips SHP9500. This is an open back dynamic driver headphone, and it's aimed more at the budget conscious. I believe it costs about $50 or $60 at the time of this review. And we're going to talk about what it sounds like and build quality and all the usual stuff that we do. So first of all, the build quality. Okay, I'd say that it's a little bit better than average for this price range because you've got your use of metal here, which, what, at $50? Even that is very appreciated, and not even the case all the time. And I really like the adjustments here. You guys probably can't see that, but what's cool is they're numbered, so you can actually see through this kind of window what number the metal is on. Oh, so cool. It goes like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it just keeps going. I wear it at about 4, in case you guys are curious and you own this headphone. So I like that. There's a lot of fabric going on inside here, and that's good and bad. So the fabric is very soft, and I like it. It's not really memory foam or anything. It's just kind of just foam. But what is a little weird is it's really shallow. So your ears touch the inside of the ear cup all the time, or at least mine did. Now, is that a problem, however? Actually, I wasn't that bothered by it, and I almost forgot that that happens while wearing this thing. So it didn't really bug me a whole lot. But that's something to keep in note, since I know a lot of people are bothered by that. This thing does not have the deepest ear cups I've ever seen, but I didn't really have a problem with the fabric here. It might get a little scratchy, I guess, for some people too. Headband is made out of the same material, basically. And so the build's okay, but I wouldn't exactly sit on this and expect it to survive. The grill's here, probably some kind of metal, and the rest of this is just a lot of plastic. So that's what the build is like, and the cable is actually removable, which is pretty cool, although it really is cheap and not very anti-memory forming. Basically just connects with a 3.5mm right in here. It's quite a firm click, firm removal, which is probably a pretty good thing. And of course you get your 1/4-inch adapter. This may or may not be the one that came with this, but I'm pretty sure it comes with a 1/4-inch adapter, as most of these kind of headphones do. So, you know, the cable is, it's not the best, but it'll do the job. I mean, you have to consider the price we're working with here. So the comfort was all right, and the build quality was okay, and I think it's all right for the price range. So now let's talk about the sound. All right, as usual, we're going to start with the bass. So what is the bass like on this headphone? It rolls off. That's really the immediate thing you notice about it. It didn't really bother me a ton, though, because you can equalize it and bring it up, as I tend to do with a lot of open back headphones. But the interesting thing about this headphone, and something that of course a lot of people have been asking for, is to compare it to the HD600. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the comparison between them. And the interesting thing I've found in the bass with these is that the bass here, when equalized, hits nicer. It hits harder. It has better dynamics than the HD600. I know I'll probably roast it for that, but really, that's what it sounded like to me. And if you increase the bass on the HD600 to get to the level that you increase the bass on these to about the same level, you'll find that the 600 has a looser, less defined bass. And I think a lot of people will find that the case as well. If for some reason you happen to own both of these, I'm just going to say that the bass here is capable of extending better with more impact. Now, as it is clean, while technically both of these headphones have pretty relatively sloppy bass, because they're an open back, they're not really designed to produce a lot of bass. So when you increase the bass with EQ on both of these, it's not going to be as well defined as some closed backs. Now, that's not to say it's bad, because I was quite surprised with how well this did, but you have to consider that it's still an open back dynamic, and there's still you're going to have some negative effects if you try to increase the bass on these. But I was impressed, I will say. Now, the mid-range. Interestingly enough, the mids on these headphones, both of them, don't seem that colored to me. I think they did a pretty good job on the on getting the peak right in the mids, on the uncompensated responses. Now, I haven't even seen the measurements on this headphone other than a couple of suggestive ones of how it would sound on golden ears and some flat plate measurements. So I don't even have Tile's measurements of this headphone if it ever happens at the time of this review. So you're getting more of what I think I hear rather than me looking at the measurements and double checking to see if that's actually what I hear in this review, just to let you know. Now, the HD600 here seems a little bit more forward than the SHP9500. Not surprising to me. The 600 always sounded like it had a little bit of shout. Yes, it can probably change a little bit with amps, but with my setup, it sounds like the 600 is a little shoutier. But both headphones maintain a pretty good timbre in the mids, and they don't really bother me very much. I will say that the low mid slash, not really the low mids, but I'd say the mid. I mean, this headphone is warmer sounding through the bass, but the mids are a little bit more forward, whereas this headphone rolls off a little bit more, but doesn't have as much of that mid bass hump, and the mids are not quite as forward. So that's what I kind of compare these in the bass and mids to sound like. Now, the treble is where probably these two differ the most. The SHP9500 is clearly brighter, and it's not horrible, but it's definitely going to annoy you on some music, I think. If you're working with really well-mastered music, jazz, classical, whatever, this is going to be pretty good, and it probably won't bother you, bring out lots of nice, crisp air, but you have to keep in mind it's definitely overemphasized. I mean, especially, I found some peaks. I'm guessing at the mid-treble peak, something like 11K. It's kind of what it sounds like to me by experimenting with EQ, and there's also a 5K peak on this one that's supported by some measurements, and I can hear that too. There's definitely some kind of shout in the low treble at 5K, or upper mids, wherever you define that to be. But that's what I'm hearing, and also the air is very, very good. Very, very good for the price on this headphone, and by very, very good, I mean it's actually quite a bit boosted. But hey, at least it's got some good extension. But it definitely is a shiny sounding headphone in the treble, where the mids are more in line and the bass is very, very neutral, except that it rolls off quite a bit without EQ. But I still found the treble here not to be nearly as clean, transparent, natural, whatever kind of adjective you want to use as the HD600, which just sounds way more effortless and just more true to life to me. This headphone without EQ is going to sound in the treble more fake, like kind of fake detail, trying to emphasize those mid-treble frequencies to get as much air as possible out of the recording, but in the process, of course, as you would expect, it also sounds a little bit artificial. Kind of reminds me of the M40X now that I think about it, and yes, that review is going to be in the works soon. Alright, enough about the treble. The soundstage, now this is the low point by far of this headphone, and I'm sorry to rain on your parade, but the soundstage of the SHP9500 does not live up to any kind of hype that people have generated around it, if there was any hype. It does not have very good imaging or width, and it kind of reminds me as a confused closed headphone in the soundstage. This is immediately apparent with running some of Tile's jazz test tracks through this thing and then switching to even the 600, which sounds immediately more wide, much better instrument separation and imaging. And then don't even get me started on the HD800 handles that track. It's incredible. So yeah, the big trade-off to me with this headphone is the soundstage. It really sounds confused. It doesn't have a very good sense of direction, and the width is not particularly there. So if you're trying to look for a headphone for gaming, not the best decision. Not the best decision. Now, that is partially justified by how low the price is, considering that this thing is like $50. That's I'm gonna forgive it to some degree, but it's something to keep in mind. There's a large, if this ends up being your first open headphone, which getting ahead of myself, then you have quite a bit of ways to upgrade in terms of especially the soundstage. As far as isolation goes, obviously there's zero. Just in case you didn't know that, this is an open back headphone. The back is completely open. You will annoy everybody with it. Do not use this in public, please. Genre pairing, I think this is better for more warm mastered genres, or maybe some people will say properly mastered genres, you know, like classical jazz, well mastered rock, classic rock, some of the remasters, that kind of thing that's come out. I think it could work for EDM, but you definitely need to apply some bass boost here to really have any enjoyment out of that, and cut the treble a bit, because it's going to be quite searingly in your face. That's how this thing pairs with genres, in my opinion. Amp needs, I'd say minimal. I mean, these get really loud easily, but if you're going to be boosting the sub bass like I do with my EQ, like I usually do with most open backs to some degree or another, you're going to want at least a low power amp to get these up to enough volume for you. Overall, though, I think this is a really, really nice value headphone. I think it'll be a very good introduction if you've never owned an open back headphone before. Just know that there are serious shortcomings with it in terms of soundstage, and it sounds a little bit artificial in the treble, but man, the overall resolution here is blowing things out of the water, like the K240 Studio, which is a much less capable headphone in terms of transparency, but I mean, it has its own flavor, so that's its own thing. But this, if you want something that's more technically capable, pretty good. Not bad. But is it an HD600 killer? Pfft, no. But is it a better value? I mean, that's up to you, right? But yeah, I would say it's definitely a better value. But value for money and audiophiles, that's so subjective. So I would take the 600, obviously. But I mean, if you don't want to spend $300 on open back, you have this. But I would not recommend it for gaming. Gaming, I would say for this cheap, maybe an AD900X. Well, that's like $100 or something like that. Those have better imaging, but this, not so much. But it's nice for how cheap it is, however. So, yeah, a good first open back headphone if you've never owned one before. However, just keep in mind the flaws that I've talked about, and that is my job with these reviews. Which brings me to the end of the review. Comment, like it if you liked it, subscribe. There's always going to be more videos coming of more headphones. There's too many headphones in the world. I can't keep up with all of them, but I'm going to try. All right, guys. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.